Well, good morning, everyone. This is Chris Stew with E1, and I'm excited to present to you today on our Smartlists in the cloud, which is part of our Smartlist Trek series, which I'm really excited about. Again, we had 7 total webinars in this series, and it focused around everything from advanced smart list stuff to kind of the next generation smart list to what comes next. So I'm excited to kind of give you a taste of that next piece today. And again, we'll introduce some of the other sessions that you can sign up for if you haven't already. So let's jump right in. Just a quick little agenda. We're going to be, again, kind of just getting a quick little intro into, what does this mean? What does my GP Smart List in the cloud mean? We're going to talk about, how we handle favorites and new lists, some custom lists. We're going to get into kind of an interesting topic called accounting adjacent apps. So I won't spoil anything now on that, but I'm excited to talk about that. And then again, just really the topic of bringing GP data wherever you work. So let's dig right in. First of all, we are talking about a kind of a game changer here, right? So if we start with just our GP data, we've been, and again, I've been in the GP space for 26 years now, almost 27 years at this point in time. But we've come a long ways from when I was there and we first introduced smart lists to the world, and then again as E1 started introducing Smartless Builder and some of the next generation stuff around SmartView, and then finally really where we're at today is with Popdock. How does Popdock again enable some of these things? So this is exciting because we move from where everything had to be inside of Dynamics GP and everything had to be on premise to freeing up that data to make that available in many other places. So that's what we're going to kind of get into, and again show you that we can use all those standard smart lists that you already have. We can filter, sort, move columns, all those things. There's some other features again that weren't there really inside of smart lists themselves. And so we'll talk about those just briefly, being able to group and summarize data. And then smoking fast, you will find that this is something that if you're comparing it to your smart lists and lots of data, you'll find that this is much faster. Okay, so let's start with, I want to give a demo right now. Let me just switch my screen here. Okay, so we're going to jump right into the web interface for Popdock. And what I'm going to show you is that you have access to all kinds of smart lists, right? If I click on this, you can see here's all my sales smart lists. If I click on this, I can go to all those groups like you're used to inside of GP, and we can switch over from, the payable side of things to inventory to, financial transactions. Just to kind of show you a little bit of the interface though, one of the things you'll notice right out of the bat is that we can do some really interesting things, and it's very efficient compared to some of the ways that we've had to use it inside of GP. And so adding columns is literally click, 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 right? That's all I do is click that, and there we go. I have those new columns have been added. If you want to remove columns, it's the same way. It's just a couple of clicks. Oop, I got a little click happy there. There we go. If I want to get rid of those last 3 and the phone number, now I can do that very quickly. If I want to maximize my real estate, there we go. I can hit refresh. You can even move stuff around, right? If city was important here, I can move it over to this area. So you can very quickly interact with your data. And again, before stuff that would take many clicks to do, you can now do those kinds of things. I think one of the really big things for a lot of the customers out there that have been in the Smartlist world is, how do I filter this data down? And one of the biggest things that we've done with Popdock is we've given you an unlimited amount of filters, right? You just keep mashing on this button You can have as many as you like. You can change an and to an or. Just with the click there, you can choose how many records you want to return. If we want to return 100,000, we can do that. And then just to show you, depending on the type of data, right? This city is a string field. You'll see we got a bunch of different types of, filters in here, even more than you would find inside of GP by default. But if I switch to like a date field, and I may not have it, okay, all I have is a created date on this one. But what I want to show you is that we'll see some different options, right, for dates because, we don't have a contains, for example. But what I want to show you is that in the past, maybe where you would choose between a set of transactions, and again, this probably makes more sense inside of the world of a transaction. I have a customer on the screen right now, but you would typically say, hey, between, maybe the first of the month and the end of the month. What we found, though, by studying how users were really utilizing this, what they want or how they wanted to use it, is that we added these comparisons in here. And so you don't even have to type in between two dates. You can say, actually, I just wanted everything for this month, or I wanted last month stuff, or last quarter, or last year, this year, currently this year. So this is something that I think we've really made it faster for people to do, because now I have everything that was, in this case, every customer that was created this month, I save this as a favorite, and now we can quickly go back to this, and I can have 10 favorites that, are this month, this quarter, this year, last year, last month, last quarter. So those are the kinds of things that you'll find really, really efficient inside of here. Additionally, you can do something that I'm going to switch to a different list at this point in time. So why don't I switch to like the sales transactions, for example. And you can see there was an example right there. I have the default view, and then I have a last year favorite on that one. So in this example, what I wanted to show you on this one is I do have a number field, and you can see we're getting a subtotal for all the document amounts inside of here. Let's go ahead and let's pull all the transactions. So I'll just add a couple zeros there. I don't think I have more than 10,000 on this one. Okay, 638. So there we go. There's our numbers. But here's what I want to show you now is if we wanted to see the sales transactions by the customer, for example, I can drag that up. Now I have subtotals by customer. So we can see our buddy Aaron Fitz. There's his subtotal, and we can drill down and see all of those transactions. But if you also further wanted to see it by the type of document, I could simply drag that up. And so now I have a secondary grouping. So now I have by customer and then by their document types. And we're getting subtotals for each of those as well as an overall subtotal. So some of those things that, again, you maybe would have had to go outside of GP for to get a summary, right? Maybe you had to always export it to Excel. You can now do that type of information right here, and without ever leaving, and again, not needing to really again leave the system without getting the data that you need. Okay, let me just go back to this. I want to show you just a couple more things inside of here, because there's some really nice things that we can do. You can see in this example, I can actually see related information. So if we talk about this and GP, this really becomes a lot about kind of those go-tos, we would call it there. A lot of them we call, we have actions or details. So kind of a combination of those things where I have the capability of, in this case, I can see some additional information about that customer down below, or I could see the notes that were on that particular transaction, which doesn't look like there's any on there. I can even see attachments. I think this is a pretty cool thing, is that I can actually pull those documents that might have been stored inside of the GP database. I have access to see those documents and download them right from this web application and my GP data. I think the other thing I want to show you is that This is fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to another tab where I have another transaction list. This is 100,000 financial, right? The account transactions smart list inside of GP. You would never do this in a demo with Smartlist because it would literally take you over 15 minutes to pull this data back. What I'm going to show you is it takes about 30 seconds. So there we go. It's now filling in, and there we go. Now we have 100,000 transactions that were pulled back from GP in right around 30 seconds. So that is a huge thing, I think, for you, is if you do have larger amounts of data, if you're not just pulling 10 records here and there, you will find that Popdock is something that really frees up those smart lists because you can access that data very, very quickly. Okay, let's jump back to this now. Again, we kind of covered, just some of the standard stuff inside of there. But let's go to the next section. This is what gets really exciting for a lot of people because we have the capability of importing your existing favorites from GP, right? So if you've spent a lot of time, if a lot of your users have favorites that are inside of there already, we can bring those over. This is something that I'm really excited. This feature is actually coming out next week. So next week, this will be fully in there. It's just undergoing the last bits of testing right now. So this is exciting because you'll have every favorite you can bring over. Now you can also create brand new favorites inside of Popdock. So you don't have some of those limitations. Like I said, there are additional restrictions or filters that you can put on these lists inside of here beyond just 4 of them, and there's even some additional types and things like that. So you have a lot more capabilities when you're creating new favorites, and we can even share those with other users or even a full team. If you have teams set up, we can share those with other teams, which makes it really, really handy. And then finally, we can also create new lists. So that's what I want to show you next. Okay, so if we go into, I'm just going to go into the favorite area here is, and why don't I go back to this one? We won't work with that huge data set. So if I go back inside of here, and if we wanted to filter this down or add some columns or whatever we want, we can do that. But then at the end of the day, I can actually say, okay, I want a new favorite. And again, I could call it, this quarter. And then you can see if I have users or teams that have access to this, I could say, hey, this guy is gonna get that favorite shared with them. So this is a really handy way of doing this. And then now, like I said, now we can either go to the default view or we can go to one of our favorites inside of here. Now, another thing that's kind of interesting, we can actually report across multiple companies. And so if I do this, for example, if I pick a second company, we start getting another column called company. And so we can see which transactions came from Fabricam and which transactions came from the other company. So that's something, again, that we can save and then quickly go back to as well. Okay, so what I want to show you is how do we actually create new lists, right? You said these are all the standard lists, but what about some of the lists I may already have built inside of GP with Smartlist Builder or something like that. So if I go ahead and go into this connector, and this is where you add brand new connectors, right? So again, you'll see we have a whole host of them. We're obviously focusing on the Microsoft family GP here, but this is where you set up a new connector. I'm going to pull up an existing one that we have because I'm going to show you how you can configure this and customize it. So if we go in here to start, you might recognize these, right? These are coming from what your smart lists are. Now, if you want to add additional groups or edit, make changes to these names inside of here, you can do that, right? It's basically very, very easy to add a new group. It's just a way of kind of putting those lists together. And you'll see we have a ton of them out of the box, right? All your standard smart lists plus a few extra ones that we thought were beneficial to everyone. But when that's not enough, you say, okay, how about those ones I built with SmartList Builder? Well, those are there, right? Here's all the stuff it's reading from my GP system. It says, hey, you got a few SmartList Builder lists inside of here. I can go check, 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 and I can do that. Even if you have baby SmartList Builder, right? If you built it with Microsoft's attempt, SmartList Designer, you can actually pull in those lists as well. You'll notice is that we have a few other ones, right? Some things around payroll and HR. We find that those are a little more sensitive, and so we want to make sure that you want to make those available and not just blindly give everybody access. So we just make it a secondary step to say, hey, even those lists are already there, we want to make sure you go check, yes, I want to enable these, and then I'm going to grant access to who should have access to it. So those are some of those standard lists, but then you're still not stuck there, because you can also go to any view or even down to a table level. So anything inside of either those company databases you may have or your Dynamics database, you can pull data from anywhere there. So there's some really nice things here that you're never stuck, right? It's not hard coded. You can pull any of that information back in. Okay, let's quickly look at a list inside of here, because before I set up the next section on here, I want to just show you what is available to us. So if we, for example, wanted to pull up the customer, you'll see all the fields and lists that are inside of here, and we can actually even change them. So you'll see some of these are strings. This is an interesting one, this balance type, that's actually a list, right? You can make any of these a list if you want to kind of provide some ease in the way that you filter on it, for example. And so you can change even a common one that you actually are using as a string. I can change a user defined field, right? I think I have a user defined field in here. Okay, I could change the name of this, right? If you have something called shipping center or something like that, right? You could change this user defined one or user defined two to be that data. Additionally, you can choose how you want this information to be summarized. So I showed you an example that earlier when we did some grouping. If I want to, summarize it, or if I want a count or an average, I can do all those things right inside of here. Now, the other thing I want you to note that's important in here is I can actually make calculated fields. So this is pretty cool, because without having to build it in another system or whatever, I can add new calculations simply by just kind of a wizard-driven thing, and say, hey, I want one additional field or some math or something like that. You also have control over which fields will default. So you can see in this example on this customer, there's only 8 fields. So if I wanted, some additional fields like the email address or this or that or the other thing, I can choose to add any of those fields inside of here if I want. Otherwise, they become available later on. You can even put in permanent restrictions inside of here. So if there was a subset of data that you wanted to push out, but not to everyone, we can put a restriction in there. We can even do a restriction kind of like GP, where we'll be able to filter down by user. So those are pretty cool restrictions as well. Those are ones that we built into Smartlist Builder area there. I talked briefly about details, but this basically allows me to attach anything that is related. And so again, most of this stuff is all GP information, right? If I want to see the attachments or addresses or their sales orders or receivables transactions for this customer, I can choose where they need to be. I can show it below the record in a sidebar or drill down to a new page, kind of like you would have had inside of GP where you could drill down to it. But because we're making this available outside of GP, we want to make sure that you have those drill down capabilities without necessarily going back to the interface. All right, so that is, I think that's where I'm going to leave that section, because some really cool things on, everything from working with our favorites to creating brand new lists. So let's go into the next section, is how do I actually create brand new custom lists? And I'll start with this. This is, I think, one of those things that a lot of people get hung up on. One of the reasons we made this whole new Popdock bundle is that we wanted to give you access to all the tools that you would need. So Popdock includes Smartlist Builder and SmartView for some people that may want to use that, but it's all part of the same tool set now, so that you can do things like create new smart lists. And I will say this, I still believe the Smartlist Builder tool is the best way to create a brand new smart list for GP people. It's just easy. It gives you all the nice names inside of there. There's even features in there to tell you what tables are on any window. So there's a lot of things built into just Smartlist Builder itself. But again, I still think that's the best way of creating them. That being said, custom lists give us some additional capabilities, because I can take a couple of lists that I've already spent time on, I can combine them, and I can even combine data from other connectors. So what does that mean? Well, now I could combine data with a CRM system, or maybe an expense management system, or whatever. I can do some really interesting things with the data. And so that's where I want to take you next, is on that journey. So let's go down here, and instead of looking at those standard ones, you can see in this example, I have one custom list. But what I want to show you is there are 5 different types. So I can do, and I'll start with this, maybe just kind of for simplicity. A join list is kind of like the SQL world, right? Where you would join a table to another table, right? So I might take the common things from a customer, and I might then combine that with their sales transactions to get all of the sales orders for that customer. But there's maybe 5 fields I want to see on the customer, and there's 5 more fields that are on the sales transaction. That's the kind of example, right, where I can join those together. And again, we've been able to do that with Smartlist Builder inside of GP. But where this gets interesting is when you want to do some information outside of GP. And so that's where I could take, for example, I could take my GP customer and I could match it back to a CRM system, right? Maybe it's Microsoft's Dynamics CRM or Dynamics CE. I could basically say, hey, you know what? I want to join those two things together. Maybe I have 10 custom fields in the CRM system, and I want one list that has the information, maybe the billing information from GP, and then these extra special fields from the CRM system, or maybe it's Salesforce or Sugar CRM or whatever. So we can join those lists even though they aren't necessarily SQL anymore. So you can kind of think of this as a virtual SQL where we're able to join anything together. Same kind of concept here, where with a merge list is kind of like a union in SQL, where I can say, hey, give me similar things. So let's take, for example, maybe you had some e-commerce systems. So let's say we had Shopify, and then maybe you had another store that was using Magento and another one that's using WooCommerce. I could join, or sorry, I got to be careful here. I could merge all those pieces of data into one thing, and I could have today's e-commerce orders. Or again, it could be, we could pull in GP data as well, but it basically gives us a chance to take, similar type data and union it or merge it together into one list that has everything that you need. We can even do some comparisons too. So if I go back to like a CRM system, for example, maybe I want to compare my GP customers with my accounts, is what they're called inside of Salesforce. And so I could then do a comparison to say, hey, you know what, show me only the ones that haven't been created inside of GP yet. And then maybe Popdock is built into Smart Connect. We can actually pull that comparison and bring in only the ones that haven't been brought in already. So you can do some interesting things there. We can restrict down the data in a list. This is a real popular one as well, is that maybe I want to have a copy of a list that goes to a certain sales territory or something like that. I can restrict that data down, and we can even do a summary of a list. So I could roll up, by a territory, or I could roll it by a particular state or country or a product, whatever it is, I can roll those up into one list. So maybe I went through 100,000 records, but at the end of the day, I only end up with 500 records because I have a summary of all of that history. So this to me is a huge area that you have to grow, I guess, the kind of data that you want to see inside of here. And so you're not just stuck on GP data. This is kind of a really big point of today's session, is you're not stuck on GP data. As you start looking at other systems, you're going to note that there's some really powerful things that you can do with Popdock to bring all that together. Okay, so we talked about custom lists. Let's talk about this next area, because this one is really interesting to me. I think there's a lot of applications out there that are, well, I'll use the word I have on the screen, adjacent to the accounting system. So there's a lot of things that we maybe don't necessarily want inside of GP, but maybe it's the same type of person that needs some visibility into those systems. So it could be, something from expense management, or, HR payroll systems that are external to GP, or there's a whole host of like AP and document management type systems, or project systems, or again, we mentioned CRM type systems like Salesforce and Sugar and Dynamics. There's a whole host of those systems that contain information that we may want to see, but we don't always want to integrate, right? We don't always want to move them or synchronize them between systems. So this is where Popdock can be very powerful. And again, just maybe here's just kind of a visual, just showing you that while we have this core GP, right, that we realize that there's all kinds of other systems out here, and this is just a handful, right? We already talked about e-commerce systems, CRM systems, right? There's all kinds of things that are surrounding our GP system, but how do we get at that data? So this is what I want to talk about, is that, again, if we go back into this connector section, is that if I choose to add a connector, we've given you a whole host of these that we can hook into. Like I said, everything from the Dataverse, Microsoft, some data lake information, some Amazon type stuff. We can even maybe a little more generically, we can hook into like other SQL servers. So if you have custom applications that are sitting on another SQL server, we can hook into that data. So that's one of the powerful things that Popdock can do, is we can hook into I'll call it a hybrid, right? Because like a lot of times you may have some applications that are on premise, right? Probably your Dynamics GP today, maybe some other custom apps, but then you have other cloud-based applications that you may need to pull that information together. So whether it's a credit card management, system, or whatever it is, we can hook into that. Now you can see we can pull anything with SQL Server. It could be MySQL, Postgres, those kinds of things. But the other thing I want to point out is we have a more generic type solution. And so what does this mean for us? Well, there's a lot of industry specific cloud applications that you may not have, or we may not have a dedicated connector for, but they have given a really good API or web service or REST service. You might hear some of those kinds of things. So we can, without needing to hire a developer, we can pull that information into Popdock and pull that just like anything else. So I just want to show you that we have a whole host of these, but if we go back to this main screen, while we started with, some GP data, you can see I can quickly switch to other type systems, right? I can switch to this connector. This is pulling some information about Popdock. This is pulling information from an Azure data lake. This could be pulling my Zendesk users. So you can see in one system, I've pulled all those pieces of information together. And that's where things are really, really powerful, is that you can aggregate that. And even, we haven't talked about this too much, you can kind of make a home page or a dashboard, and we can have, one piece of information coming from GP, one piece of information coming from an e-commerce system, one coming from a help desk system, whatever it is. I can customize how I want to see this information or summarize it inside of here. Okay, so let's go back. I got one more topic, and then we'll kind of wrap things up and answer some questions. So this has been a really big one that Popdock has helped people with, is asking the question, where do you actually spend most of your day? Is it inside of Dynamics GP, or is it in another application, right? We've mentioned like a CRM system. Do you spend most of your day in Excel, right? Where do you actually want to see this type of information? And so that's what we're going to explore next. Okay, if we go back, for example here, and just to switch things up, let's go to a different list. Why don't we go to the purchasing side of things, since we haven't gone there yet? And I'll just pull some payables transactions here. Okay, so now we have some payables transactions in this example, but what I wanted to show you is, what if you spent most of your day not in here, not inside of GP, but you actually wanted to see this information outside of the space? So what I want to show you first is that I can dump this to Excel. And again, this is smoking fast. You can see, even if I had 10,000, 50,000 records, it would just be a matter of seconds to dump that. Okay, after I hit all the warnings, there we go. So here is all of our payables transactions. Now you'll see it actually exported everything, and again, it like took 2 seconds. It exported everything as a table. And so what are some of the beautiful things you get? We put all the auto filters in there. We actually even, let me scroll down here. We even added the subtotal. Now, what's interesting about that? We didn't just copy the text in. If you look closely, we actually put in the formula. And so if you were to go, maybe say you had a list of invoices for a particular customer you wanted to export, you could remove some ones that were maybe still in contention, and it would automatically give you the total that you desired. So it's some of those things that we've done just to make your life a little bit easier. Well, since I'm inside of Excel, I wanted to show you another way that Popdock can help you. If I go to this data tab, you'll see I have our Excel add-in that we have that's available at no additional charge if you have Popdock. And so if I connect to my Popdock account, I'm now going to see all the connectors I have, right? So whether it's, any of them, we'll go pull some GP data in this case. And again, pulls all my companies, pulls all the different groups. So if we want to pull some inventory information instead, and I can pull item prices. If I had any favorites, it would actually pull my favorites in, which is pretty cool. And I'll just hit insert data. So now what it's done is it's kind of changed instead of an export, it's pulled, right? It's pulled that data in, and you have access to any kind of connector. You can now see that information right inside of Excel. So that's one way that a lot of people will do it. Another thing is that some people will build like a Power Query. So we can actually do a dynamic piece of a dynamic way of getting the data, and we can pull that into Power Query inside of here or inside of Power um, Power BI. So that's one area. But then here's where I want to kind of switch it up. Getting access to GP data has long been an issue for many people, right? It sometimes involves a really extensive integration. And again, we have a fantastic tool called Smart Connect that helps us with that. But there are times where it takes a lot of time or there's some complexity. And so what I want to show you is a couple examples of how we can make GP data available to people in other systems without necessarily needing to do that traditional integration of moving the data. We can just basically do something where we can actually show the data or display that data. So if I go into, I'm just going to show you a couple examples here. If I go into side of Microsoft Dynamics CRM, I can click on this ERP orders tab. And what we're seeing in this case is I'm seeing a live look into the GP transactions for this particular customer or account, as it's called inside of the CRM system. And so this, doesn't feel like some foreign application. It still allows me to, do the things like I showed you before, where I can add columns. So again, if I wanted to add like a location in here, for example, and go grab the new data, now we have our location. If I want to subtotal by location, now we have, we can see which one's doing, the best. Looks like the downtown location is where most of our transactions are coming from for this customer. We can even, do some really fun things where we can still filter that data. We can still export this to Excel. We can try to find, something in this result set. I can even, I have one working code. Okay, there we go. This is pointed to a live look into FedEx, UPS, USPS, DHL. And so you can see this tracking number that I have went out real time and showed me when this package or where the package is at, right? Whether it's out for delivery or it's been delivered. So there's some really cool things that we can pull all that data together. But I just wanted to show you that we can actually take that information and embed it in other systems so that it's available. Now, let's mix this up a little bit, because this isn't GP data anymore. This is now from an entirely different system called a help desk system of Zendesk. And so what does this mean? Well, now I've made some of this data available. Maybe that we don't have this person doesn't have access to log into this system, but we can show them some of that data. We could do that right inside of here. And here's the important stuff. I can actually do actions on this. All right, I'm feeling a sneeze coming on here. So if I go quiet for a second, you'll know why. So what I want to show you is that if we wanted to allow this person to change the priority, maybe this is no longer a high priority, maybe this is urgent now. I can do an action and interact with this system right from here. So this was ticket 1976. If we go ahead and look at ticket 1976, so now I'm inside of the Zendesk help desk system. What you can see is that priority has been changed to urgent on this ticket. And we were able to do that right through Popdock. So we can do all kinds of actions, right? Whether it's calling a Smart Connect process or a Power Automate flow, or sometimes it's just drilling down to a different website to open it in another application. Those are all actions that can be done right inside of Popdock. Since I'm in Zendesk, I just want to show you one quick thing. We can also use Popdock. This is Popdock once again, now made to look and feel just like the system that it's in. So made to look and feel like Zendesk, so it's not just a foreign system, but this is now pulling live information about the contact or the account from, in this case, it's a CRM system instead of GP, but we can embed GP information inside of here, right? If this, instead of opportunities, maybe this was the sales transactions, we could embed that right inside of here so that we can give our help desk agents access to that GP data as well. I'm going to show you one more example, and then we'll wrap things up. This is very, very interesting because this is Teams. And again, I know a lot of the world, especially the last few years, has really started to use applications like Teams. And so in 30 seconds, you can embed any kind of GP data or other data inside of here without any programming. We can do that in 30 seconds. And this just happens to be pulling a live look into GP projects. So just to give you some ideas, and this now looks and feels like the Teams application that we put it inside of, you have some of those capabilities. All right, so let's go ahead and let's wrap things up. So some of the other trainings, you're here, right? This is the one that we just got done. You can see that there's four more trainings if you would like to get some input on some of these next topics, which I'm really excited about as well. But if you do have, we're going to take some questions now. If you do have some questions after this, we'll be happy to answer those as well. So let me go look and see what we have for questions. I thought I saw a couple coming in. Oh, we get more than a couple. Okay, awesome. Okay, going back to okay, I gotta understand what to say. Can you combine tables for some specialized reports? Is it easier in Popdock or GP? Again, if it's just GP data and it's the cryptic GP tables, I would tell you that sometimes Smartlist Builder is the best way to build that list, and then just enable it to bring it inside of Popdock. Okay. Got some questions on filters. Like this month, is it based on calendar or financial calendar? So today it is based on just the regular calendar. We are getting ready very soon here in the next couple months. We are going to have the capability of basically defining your fiscal periods, so that then it would be able to match when you chose, like this quarter. It could actually be using your fiscal periods instead of just the calendar fiscal periods. So that is a feature that is coming, but today it is calendar based. Okay, another question: does Popdock work with business? It says Business Center. I don't know if it means Business Central or Business Center. So maybe I might need some clarification on that. It does work with Business Central. That's one of the connectors that's there. If it's Business Center, I'm not sure. I guess I'm not familiar with that one. So we'd have to look that up. And the next one is, can you pull in Smartless favorites that use third-party products? Okay. Here's kind of the clarification there. If it was built using Smartless Builder and pulling in those tables, and then you bring that list over, then yes, all those favorites will go in there. If they are dexterity based, so there were a couple of ISVs that chose to, basically build their own smart list using dexterity, then in that case that would have to be, redone, because we don't really know anything about those lists. So if it was redone, again, using Smartless Builder or a view or something like that, we could pull that. But if you've used Smartless Builder, not a problem. You'll be able to pull those favorites. Okay, there's another question. Is there a connector for Paylocity? I have not heard of that one yet. So we don't have a dedicated connector, but it's one that I could look into and see if like our REST connector could hook into and make that data available from there. Okay, another question on like Avalara, the sales tax. Could that be an adjacent app? Yes, again, and depending on some of the stuff, right, they have are just sitting in other tables. They're inside of GP, I think sometimes, depending on which version you have, or again, if you get out of the GP space and put it in BC or something like that, then then there's some additional places where it could be stored. But yes, as long as it's in a table, we could pull that information in there as well. Question: will these sessions be run again? This one in particular won't. All of these are being recorded, and so you will be sent a link to replay that recording or share with other team members that weren't able to come today. So that is another thing. And then how do you restrict access per user? It's just a setting in there where you can restrict on particular lists. You can choose and say, hey, I want to use this user that's set up inside of Popdock, and when it's this user, then they get to see their territory. For example, if it's this user, they might get to see other territories. Okay, I've got another one here. Would this be a good solution if you want to move to BC, Dynamics BC, but not take decades of history to BC? Maybe have the history in the data lake and then use Popdock to access both your live data set and this historical data lake. Yeah, I didn't focus on that in this session. One of the other sessions next week will actually be very, very focused on that topic. But maybe just to address it briefly for everybody here is that if you are looking to move, at some time, again, maybe it's now, maybe it's a couple years from now, maybe it's 5 years or 10 years from now. Popdock is a tool that can help you with that, because no matter what system, whether it's Dynamics BC or if you're going outside of the Microsoft space to, Acumatica, Intacct, NetSuite, something like that, Popdock is a tool that can help you with that historical data. So what we've been doing is we've been moving a lot of that to, just like this gentleman mentioned, we've been moving it to an Azure data lake, or some people will actually choose to keep a SQL server running either on premise, or some will move it to a cloud. But Popdock can make that data available right inside of Business Central, for example. And so that without leaving the new system, you can see that history. And again, even to take it one step further, I showed you an example of those custom lists. So that one example is a merge list. So what we've been doing quite a bit is we merge the new information with the history, right? So now we have one list that is available to pull all that data, and you don't have to go hunting around for that information. Okay, lots of great questions. Thanks, guys. So they're asking if GP security is in place, or there's a separate security setup. Is everything open to start and you have to lock it down, or is it locked down and you have to open up? Okay, yes. So maybe just I'll answer the second part of that first. Everything is locked down and you have to grant access. That's really the model, the security model that we've taken. There is a separate security from GP, because we're not going at it at the same layer, right? We're not going at it through a dexterity layer. We're basically hitting it through the connection to the SQL server. So most times people are basically, they have kind of a service account, if you will. And then we have another layer of security inside of Popdock that you have to explicitly grant access to. And one of the reasons we've done this is because while we started with GP data in our conversation today, you can see that it quickly goes beyond that as we get into other applications, where we now need, even though this user in GP matches up, we now are pulling information from Concur or from somewhere else. And so those are the kinds of things that I guess necessitate having another security model in order to grant access to the different lists. Okay, are there recordings for the ones I missed? Yeah, the other, again, there's been 2 sessions so far besides this one. Those are available as recordings as well. So those, again, if you signed up for them, you should already be getting a link if you haven't already. Otherwise, they believe they will be posted publicly at some time in the near future. Okay, and can we view the Smartless? Okay, same thing. Smartless Builder sessions from last week. If you didn't register for them, yes, I think what those will be done is they'll be put on like our YouTube or Vimeo channels. So those will be coming. It just might be a little more delayed. Okay, I think I'm out of questions. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of great questions. So if you do have anything more, what I would encourage you to do is to, again, just send a message into sales or our support team, and they will get us to the right place. Or there's a lot of really cool people here that are more than willing to help you, that are the account managers. So thank you for your time today. And again, you should be getting a link to get the recording. So thanks, and have a great day, everyone.